Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, Hyundai Santa Fe Drive Days Special Edition. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. It is
He's put it in capitals, everyone.
because there was 2 days of driving.
That's a lot of driving.
It's almost unheard of amounts of driving for a drive day.
Yes, that's what I heard about this. Anyway, do we want to explain... Well, it's a special edition, so obviously Andrew has been off and driven the new Hyundai Santa Fe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the obvious bit. But do you want to start with telling us what a Santa Fe is, or do you want to start with telling us about your your 2 hard days of driving work?
I will start with what the event was all about, and then we'll get on to the Santa Fe.
I'm just jealous, by the way. Let's be clear. This is pure jealousy.
We spent 2 days, as we've just said, driving the new Santa Fe, which is their large hybrid SUV. We gathered at Worcester, and then where we were introduced to the cars we were going to drive, and then we went off across the English-Welsh border into North Wales. So this was different to what is normally experienced because there was a lot of driving, which is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely brilliant to do the amount of driving that we did. It was like 6 hours on day one.
This is an unnerving amount because sometimes people are shipped halfway across Europe, taken in a bus on a magical mystery tour, possibly get half an hour in a car, and then are shipped in another bus to possibly a different airport and then drive back to the UK. And it's taken 18 hours or even overnight or whatever, and they drive the car for half an hour. 6 hours of driving is quite an impressive amount on the first day.
Yeah, and it was about 4.5 on the second day. It was a slightly different route back, more direct. And further to your point, we've heard of tales of some week-long reviews where people haven't driven as much as that in the vehicle.
Mm.
We were getting a full test out of it, and it's not like these were forgiving roads either. It wasn't that they've just picked nice leafy suburbs or sweeping A roads. This was through some various mix of roads, some really tiny B roads, single lane stuff,
yeah,
as well as some urban areas, but they weren't, this was small Welsh towns and villages.
But that will have led you to a fine multi-star hotel, I'm sure, with wonderful food laid on and the chance of a nice hot shower and a big fluffy quilt in an air-conditioned room, I'm sure.
Well, the food was absolutely spot on. Superb food that was there. And we brought our hotels with us. Part of the whole thing of this was something called chabak, which is a South Korean word which blends cha, which is apparently for car, and bak, which is for stay. What we were told by Hyundai, now I am using a lot of the stuff that they've provided for us to explain this here. This is car camping. And apparently it's a trend and a lifestyle that is sweeping South Korea, where people in urban areas go out to the countryside and stay in their cars, like camper vans.
So I was actually going to try this last year. I actually have a bed which will go and can be built and will end up level in the back of my Lexus. What stopped me was not something that would stop you in Wales. It was the sudden realization that there are bears.
Yeah, no, we were in the wilds, but there was no bears.
But it is something that people are doing more and more here in the US as well, away from the bears. Or at least they don't think about the bears, but I was thinking about the bears a lot.
But I suppose as cars get bigger, which they are doing, this becomes more of a thing that's possible to do. What we did is we slept in the back of the Santa Fe. They put the seats down, and then there was a slight extra board that you can get as an optional extra, by the way, that just filled a slight gap between the flat of the seats and the front seats.
Okay.
And then they put a mattress in on top of that, and a lovely duvet and pillows, and they even plugged in some LED lights for us to read to fall asleep to and everything. I mean, it was actually really comfortable, and it's a double-sized mattress that was in the back of this as well.
All right. Mine's only single width, and I do worry about falling off.
I'm not overly tall. I'm just average height, and there was people much taller than me, and they fitted in. Okay, everyone else slept with the back door shut. I didn't. I slept with it open. And we couldn't actually we were supposed to go to the top of this hill. I'm not going to call it a mountain. It wasn't quite that tall, but it was a tall hill. And the weather was so bad that we weren't allowed up there. We slept down at sort of base camp, and we were all backed up towards trees. So I just had the back door open. And because it's so big, because this is a large car, it created this lovely awning. And I just kicked in that. It's fine. And everyone was going, "You did what?" I was like, "Yeah, it's perfectly warm." No problems.
Yeah, it was during the summer, wasn't it? We should explain we're recording this a little bit after the fact and releasing it.
Yeah, but it was tipping it down and it was blowing a hoolie, and the next tranche that went through couldn't even do what we did. So,
oh right, okay.
But then the next day, after sleeping and then getting breakfast, we then drove back to the start point, and like I said, it was a much more direct route to get us back to Worcestershire.
Cool. Saucy. Sorry, the puns aren't get any better. Okay, well, as I say, it sounds like a terrible jolly, and I'm sure it was thoroughly miserable.
Oh, it was awful.
It was awful, yeah. But I suppose that the really important bit is tell us about the Santa Fe, Andrew, because that's actually why people have clicked.
They don't want to listen to my sleeping habits.
No, they're 5 minutes in, and they're probably getting a bit bored of that now.
Yep. The Santa Fe is the large SUV that first came from Hyundai in 2000-2001. A lot has changed in that time since the Mark I came across here.
Mm.
With this latest version, there's massive changes to the exterior. It is a much more sophisticated, boxy design.
It's a whole new car compared to the previous generation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big step up from the previous generation, let alone if you go back to the original, much more workhorse type vehicle that was.
Mm.
It's very boxy and slabby. It's very clean in its design from the lines. They have eschewed any slashes, swoops, dents, as some people may call them. They haven't gone for that. They've gone for a very clean look. And we've seen increasing number of articles that mention that this is a premium and a luxury take on car design.
Mm.
Hyundai have really embraced it with this car.
Well, it's the same kind of styling language that we keep seeing on lots of their concepts, that we keep seeing on, even the Ioniq 5. Not so much the Ioniq 6, because it goes completely to the curved end of the...
Yes.
the opposite end, although somehow there's still a family resemblance. But from the 5 and through into some of the smaller Hyundais as well, then, yeah, it has very much... and we're seeing it much more in this size of vehicle as well. And I think
it's easier to do.
The current Defender, kind of one of the first of the style of aesthetic, without the Hyundaiism.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the new Land Cruiser as well, is again, it's not the same language, but it's
they're all inspired by that similar
dialect anyway.
Yeah. With Hyundai, they've had concepts following the open for more. That's what they called it internally.
Right.
But this one is bigger. It's 4.83 meters long. It's 1.9 meters wide. And a height, when it's got the little roof bars on, is 1.77 meters. That means there's more space inside, and it does feel spacious inside. You'll be pleased and probably expecting to hear, to be fair, especially if you've seen any pictures of this, and especially if you've got pictures of people standing next to it to give it sort of some idea.
Here in the US, it's been out for a good 6 months or so longer than in the UK.
Yeah.
And it is essentially the same model. I think it's different drivetrains, but it is essentially the same model. It's not big in US terms, but it is still a good size of car.
For Britain, it's pretty big as a car goes. Beyond that, you're talking about a van, really, or a caravel or something like that. People carrier type van-derived thing.
My essentially Land Cruiser, it is both longer and wider than my Land Cruiser, although I'm quite a bit taller. To give you an idea of size. Oh, it's not. Pardon me. I have made a mistake. My Land Cruiser is a centimetre longer, but also narrower.
Okay. In the time since we've first seen the Santa Fe, we have unfortunately lost the bonnet scoop because I'm a child. But that has been more than made up for in the quality sophistication side of things, including the amount of technology that is now fitted to what is effectively for the hybrid and the internal combustion engine side of the range from Hyundai. This is the top of the range that what they offer, I would suggest.
Yeah, before you move into a Genesis.
Yeah. Yeah, because beyond that, you're in a different brand. This car was designed during lockdown, and so the team had to use VR and online video calls to collaborate, which was quite a challenge for them, but they sounded like they enjoyed it. And there's a couple of things in this that make it clear that it was designed during those times, which I'll talk about further as we get into it.
Okay. But it's definitely distinctive. That's the thing about it. You can't...
I think it's a really good-looking car. I really do. Yeah. The back end is slightly more of a challenge compared to the front, I think, because of the positioning of lights.
Can I say, I think it's a little bit colour and spec dependent.
Yes, colour does make a big difference.
Over here, if you see it in base model and white, then you do expect it to have the letters U and N down the side, and it does look... It looks a very slabby and very van-like. However, once you start to get into some of the metallics and into the slightly higher end, actually getting, I was going to say the nice wheels, that sounds really bad, but actually even just the colour actually makes a massive difference.
The colour is a big, big difference to this. And I'll run through the list of colours that you can get in the UK and also their prices, because it's going to be surprising, some of that. But the car I drove was a regenerative charging hybrid, such a rare beast on British roads, with which was combined to a 1.64-cylinder petrol engine mated to a 6-speed automatic gearbox.
Seems weird a vehicle that size has a 1.6-litre 4-cylinder, really, doesn't it?
I ran through, using the spec sheet that I was given for the vehicle, ran through on day of recording the Hyundai UK website, and work out that the car that I was testing cost £46,775. This is the four-wheel drive hybrid version, by the way. I didn't make that clear. I also, with that same configuration, ran through PCP quote from Hyundai themselves. This is over 37 months. I just used what was automatically in their PCP quote configurator.
Yeah. And
that's a £9,400 deposit, so that's chunky. 10,000 miles per annum was standard, though, so that was interesting to see. And that came out at £505 a month at 6.9% APR. That's an indication of, I am sure you will get better deals going elsewhere through lease brokers, etc.
That doesn't sound too bad to me.
If you're looking at the BMW, Mercedes, Audi equivalents in terms of size as well, you're nowhere near this.
At least 10,000 more, if not 20.
You're not going to be near this price. CO2 emissions are rated at 155 grams per kilometre, with a combined WLTP rate of 41.5 miles per gallon. I'm not going to run through all the different permutations of that. On the PHEV side of things, that will apparently do 54.2 miles on EV only.
Okay.
Now, colours. There are actual colours. I'm going to start with the no-cost option and work up to the more expensive stuff. Terracotta orange is the only no extra charge colour. Then you have Abyss black, which is solid black at 700. Magnetic grey, which is the one that the car I had was in.
So that's a sort of dark graphite-y colour.
Yeah, that's 700 as well. Typhoon silver, which is very much silver, and that's 700. Creamy white pearl, which is 700. Cyber sage, which is a pearl white, so I don't quite understand what cyber and sage have to do with each other there, but that's 900. Olive green, which is a metallic green, is also 900. There is pedal blue, which is a lighter metallic grey than the magnetic grey. That's 900. Earthy brass, which is matte brown, that's 1,200. And creamy white matte, which is matte white, that's 1,200.
I've got to say, I would avoid the matte colours. I have seen both of those here, and they ain't good.
The brown, maybe it was the weather and everything, but the brown was pretty good. The terracotta is really distinctive. I quite like that.
It's all right.
But the one for me was olive green. That just looked superb.
Yes, it does look good.
Should I get on to talking about what the cars are like?
Yeah, we could do. It's kind of why people tune in after a while.
Oh dear, this always seems to be the way with these driving days. There's a lot of explanation. There's a lead up to it.
There is always a lot of here's all the context about where we are and what we did and what the
And to be fair, there's usually big presentations to explain what's different, what's new, why, who they are hoping will buy the car, etc.
with various levels of success.
Yes. It's a step up from the previous generation, which we do have special edition on, or in all areas, from the design, the quality, the space. It really feels a different car, I have to say. Space is not an issue, as I said. And anyone who's tried or owns the current generation Hyundai, latest generation Hyundai cars, the interior up front is, for the driver, is very much what you have experienced so far. So there is the long, thin screen, although this is slightly curved in the Santa Fe, and I think it's actually two screens together they've hidden in one nice curved display. Directly behind the driver's steering wheel for the information the driver needs, and then slightly to the left, you've got the touchscreeny stuff like maps and all that sort of stuff. There's also a bunch of buttons, dials, toggles, switches for you to interact with. This is not a touchscreen heavy interior at all, which is lovely.
Yes, it seems to be dialed back a little bit by Hyundai. There used to be far more, certainly in the Tucson, there used to be far more of like, well, it's a flat button, we'll pretend it's a button. That's been dialed back to make it actual buttons again, just because feedback. Literally because feedback.
I know Euro NCAP from 26 are going to be specifically testing touchscreeny and user interface areas, and will be marking companies or cars down where they are touch sensitive when they shouldn't be. They should be an actual physical something or other.
That's going to be interesting.
But they haven't really come out with explaining what is, how they're going to judge that or what needs to be where. They have actually thought through the little details as well. We had a podcast that we could listen to where some Hyundai people have been spoken to. So there was a PR chappie, there was the product manager was also talked to, but also the designer. And they explained various aspects of it. They explained the changes compared to previous Santa Fe's, and the history of the Santa Fe as well was run through. Unfortunately, and for very obvious reasons, we cannot share that with the listeners because this was produced by another content creator who is paid for their work, and that is their copyright, quite rightly.
Otherwise, it would make a very, very easy recording for us.
Yes, that is cheating to a massive degree.
Slightly, yeah.
But it was really interesting to hear the various input, and I loved the fact that we could listen to that while we were driving along, and then when they mentioned certain bits, go, oh yeah, I can see that now, and that was very helpful. One of the things that was talked about was how they have thought about it being used, and not just in the fact that it's a 6-7 seat SUV, therefore you put people in it and go to a place. Beyond that, but actually using it day to day. For example, in between the two front seats, there is two Qi chargers on the central tunnel.
Sorry, Qi as in QI and the wireless charging.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yes, just checking.
Yep, sorry. What they've done is there is a framing between, there's the Qi charger and then there is the drinks segment. And breaking between the two is a small lip. But in the lip, there are two little indentations, which means that you can put your phone on the Qi charger pad and have it plugged in if you want it to plug in. For example, your phone cannot do Qi charging, or you don't have the ability to Bluetooth connect with the car, you are connecting via a cable. And it sits there, but it keeps the phone flat, and it's not putting extra pressure on that port or the cable, which will in time will give and damage it. I mean, that's the level that they are thinking little things through, which I really liked to hear, and I really liked to see and then experience once I knew that they were there and go, yeah, actually, that's so obvious. It's a lot of those, oh, but that's so obvious. Why hasn't nobody done that before? That's not genius. And you go, no, it is genius because no one's done it before and it should have been done.
Yeah.
It was that. I like that a lot. And anyone who listens to this show knows that you and I both love when you can see somebody has thought through little details.
Yeah, the surprise and delight usability type stuff is always a big draw for me anyway.
Yeah.
Given my employment history, degree, these kind of things. Yeah.
Driving them, the 1.6 engine, and I've said this before when I reviewed the sister brand Kia Sorento, I feel is just a bit underpowered. just make it a 2 litre. Please make it a 2 litre. I know why they don't, because of emissions and CO2 and all the rest of it. It's fine, and the hybrid picks up a lot of the heavy work, but it does become noisy, and it does feel like it's trying very hard sometimes, particularly if you're going uphill. And I wonder how it will react when it's full, because obviously I drove this empty. There was just me. But if I stick the cracked windscreen hoard in there with the amount of stuff they feel they need to take, I wonder what difference I will feel then, and that's something I would like to test out. But I mean, like I say, it's fine. But I always just feel it just gets a bit too noisy, a bit too frenetic, a bit too must be worked sometimes. But it's not like it's slow. I mean, it's under 10 seconds to 62, and this, that's not a small vehicle.
No.
It's perfectly fine. It gets away from junctions perfectly fine and all this sort of stuff. I'm not saying it's in any way a compromised drive. I just want something a bit more relaxing.
Okay. That's mostly the thing, as opposed to any actual quantitative.
Yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to any sort of quantitative issues, what you'd really like is all the same numbers, but just a bit more chill.
Yeah, because considering how I felt there was such an upgrade in everything else about it and how more sophisticated it felt, that just, and it's only, I mean, I'm being really nitpicky as well, don't get me wrong, but I just feel that engine lets it down slightly.
Okay.
But having said that, I mean, it's a big car and it felt nimble. The steering, the braking, the body control was all pretty good. And there's a lot of technical details they have shared with us about how they have done a lot of things to enhance the ride comfort and the dynamics.
So not too much body roll.
Things like on-center feeling and pulling sensitivity and yoke load and front bump stopper and all these things, which mean nothing to me.
Bloomin' heck. What's the tread shuffle coefficient?
I didn't get to that stage.
Seriously, the important one with stuff like this is, did it pitch forward under braking?
Not excessively. It did not feel like a Range Rover.
Okay, right. That's kind of where I was going.
I did not get seasick at the first roundabout.
Okay. Well, that kind of stuff is well within normal limits for people not really hooning.
Yeah, again, it's if you drive it as a person it's intended for, rather than somebody who specializes in testing cars to the absolute limit, it is absolutely bob on. No one is going to exceed its limits. They're not going to go, oh, this doesn't feel very good, because it's a large SUV to carry lots of people and stuff. You drive it like a large SUV to carry people and stuff.
Yes.
Or you should.
Yes.
Whilst it is big, and it is, I think it's just inside of the limits of how big a car I'd want to drive. Like I said, beyond that, I go, van is a different thing. You are tackling things in a different way. But as a car, I think this is about the limit. It was perfectly fine.
It was pretty brave then to set you off on single track Welsh roads, because short of Devon and Cornwall, if it was going to be too big for British roads, that would be a fine place to discover that kind of thing.
And like I said, we were down single track Welsh roads at some point, dodging sheep, cattle grids, and all sorts of stuff.
Sorry, it's worth saying, because as many of our listeners, I'm sure, suspect, sometimes manufacturers choose roads and routes that will specifically show off the quality of the car whilst masking anything which might be seen as a negative.
Yes.
If it's a challenging road drive in the UK, that is far more realistic to the real world, and it shows there's a lot of faith in the product, rather than, oh no, you can only drive on these roads which are super smooth, and sometimes you get to an end of a drive session and you go, that was nice, but what if there's a speed bump, or what if there's something else, and you don't see that. So it's worth explaining to people at home that this can be a novel experience.
Absolutely, because they emphasize in their information they've handed out that this is for outdoorsy people as well. this is the sort of roads going to the sort of destinations, because they specifically talk about with the seats down or the seats up. I can't remember what the term, which it is, but basically, as long as you take the front wheels off, you can put three bikes across the back, standing upright. If you take the front wheels off, and then that's how much space is in this thing. So this is the sort of thing they expect people to do. Yes, it is. So this is the sort of roads they would expect people to go up, because if you're doing mountain biking, you are going up a single road into the middle of nowhere to park up and then hoon around and get covered in filth. That's what's going to happen.
Here I've seen a bunch of them, by the way, with the rear-mounted bike racks filled with mountain bikes, or with because lifestyle, or with kayaks strapped to the roof and that kind of stuff. It's not, I know that sometimes you'd see these things in the UK and you see them in the brochures and you go, well, that's ridiculous. But there are actually people around the world who do actually do that kind of stuff.
Let's say in this country, there's a lot of people who get like the caravels or things like that, and they are specifically because they want to go off and do outdoor pursuits at the weekend or for holidays.
Just go surfing in Devon and Cornwall.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Trying to tap into that market a bit, I feel.
Yeah.
And that's
totally.
that's cool, because they've found a niche that they think they can get for, but then it can be used as a car the rest of the time, whereas the van is often, you see them parked up most of the time and they're only used when they're not. So this is trying to sort of the one vehicle for everything. But anyway, sorry, I'm now helping Hyundai with their marketing, and that wasn't the intention. But it is helping to explain sort of the thought process behind the car, though, to be fair. It also has, as no one will be surprised, a ton of technology fitted to it. There's loads of ADAS systems. If you've listened to this show, I have always said, or I have always found, that the Hyundai Group ADAS is one of the more sensitive and finicky systems out there. They can be switched off, but that now makes starting up the car an event, because you are going through a pre-flight checks. Once you have discovered which systems you do not get on with or do not work where you are driving. I want to stress that, because I started to drive with all of them on. As I do all the time I get into a new car, whilst I'm very critical of these systems, I do not sit there and go, well, I won't switch them on, and then I'll just slag them off. I want to find out if they've been improved, if they're better, if they've got worse, what's happening. And then as I went on the drive, I then could work out which ones I did not want on the roads that we were going down.
I know that some other similar vehicles from Kia have had an over-the-air update that makes it easier to turn them off and has refined the sensitivity. Do we know if the Santa Fe's had similar?
They do talk about the over-the-air update as one of the plus points for this car. When I drove this was pre the Kia update. I do not know. Again, this is all part of if I have the car for a week, I will get to better understand these things. I'm just mentioning it. I'm not going to go into specifics of which ones I turned off or on, or which ones I found a bit hooky or anything, but I'm just saying that it does have what the General Safety Rules 2 expects in Europe. They were fitted for the cars that we had in the UK.
Okay. What about further back? I mean, you talked about the front seats, lots of space, these kind of things. What about the back seats? How do passengers fare if they're not mountain bikes?
Well, pretty decently. Just to round out the boot space, though, there's 628 litres in the boot with the seats up. If you put the seats down, there is 1,949 litres in the hybrid. The FEV is slightly less. It's like 3 or 4 litres less in each because of battery.
As a percentage.
I challenge you to find out where you've lost that from. Really. Okay. You stick them side by side. It's so small that you're not going to notice over that area. If you're in the very back seats, you're not ignored. It's not, and again, this was explained to us in the audio that we were provided with. They've made sure that people in the back have got things like cup holders. They've got chargers, so that you are not just. It's not just shove the kid in the back and ignore them. The use has been thought through at every layer or every level of the car.
I noticed that depending on the spec you choose, you either get 6 or 7 seats as well, by the way.
Yes.
So the captain's the possibility of captain's chair and chairs in the middle row, which I guess just makes it more van-like and bus-like than car-like, is there as well. I mean, relating it back to my own car, because it's the same kind of size and the same kind of market placement. One of the reasons I didn't choose one that had that is, one, because it was quite rare. And secondly, because actually it makes the car slightly less practical for loading gear and stuff in it. So if you're really, so whilst you've got more comfort, it's probably worth bearing in mind that it's also maybe less practical if you are carrying dogs, stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If it was me speccing one of these, I'd go for the 5 or 7 seat.
Yeah.
The middle row has a nice amount of space. USB ports are available. The rear seats also slide forward and back. So again, those in the very back can be given more space if they need it. But also it's part of the whole when you tip the seat forward to allow them into the boot. There's also a flat floor for the middle row of seat. That makes it easy for everyone to just get in and out either side. Like I said, up front, tons of space. Even with the center tunnel being up high, they've sort of hollowed it out, and underneath at the front, there's a bunch of space to stick stuff, as well as plenty of space in the door buckets for stuff. There's just, you are not short of small places to put things out the way so that they are not just lying around the cabin.
That's good. That's vital, really.
Yeah. But I was mentioning before that this car was designed in COVID. Here's an example of how we know. There is a UVC sterilization multi-tray which sits just above the passenger glove box, and it will sterilize items small enough to fit in it, such as wallets and phones.
Do you know what? Actually, I think that's a good thing anyway.
Yeah, I think we learned whether people believe or not that washing your hands made any difference. I think we found that by washing our hands, we became less ill, full stop.
Yes. So overall, really, I mean, that's been quite detailed.
Yes,
despite my interruptions. Overall, how did you get on with this?
I really like the car. Again, anyone who's listened long term knows that I more suffer SUVs than anything. I understand why people like them, but they're not generally for me. But if I was looking for a large SUV...
Unless he's going on holiday, everyone. Unless he's going on holiday.
Yeah. That's if I can't get a big van. But I found this one really easy to drive. I love the looks. I really do love the looks. And if I had it in olive green as well, that'd be spot on. I like the attention to detail on the inside. And I think if you've got a family that are either a largish family or a family that are growing, and you need to haul lots of stuff often, this makes a good option. Particularly the car I had was not top of the range either, and it was under £50,000. And like I said, we're working just that very rough PCP was 500. Okay, it was a chunky deposit, but still £500 a month. It's kind of difficult to ignore. I would thoroughly recommend going to try it and seeing whether, if you're not a badge snob, because I think we can be over that now with what we're being offered, and you go try it and go experience it. But I really want to try this for a week though, and really put it to some hard work with the Horde, just to see if my suspicions are actually confirmed or not. And just see how it is. Just living with it, because we're very much on a route to get to a place to then come back from the place. We weren't just trying to do normal things.
Yes.
And that's always it's always a balance, and it's difficult to do in a day.
There weren't many supermarket car parks and stuff involved.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No, awesome. Brilliant. I'm glad you enjoyed that. As always, thank you to Hyundai for the invite. For taking Andrew and co on an adventure. I saw other people's reports of going as well, and people did seem to have a good time, and also not just have a good time, but also really get a good in-depth understanding of the car as well, which is always a nice thing to see, just generally.
The manufacturers learn from that.
I think that just about rounds it up, unless there's anything else to say on that topic. Nope.
I can't think of anything else.
Don't forget that between now and next time, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts with the show at Motoring Podcast on social media, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Please don't forget to leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Cracked Windscreen on Mastodon or Blue Sky, or look for me under my actual name on LinkedIn. And Alan, if people would like to get in touch with you personally, what's the best way for them to do that?
Blue Sky is the best these days. I'm on Threads as well. In whatever social media, I'm at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley. We'll be back before very long, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
Safe motoring.